Hi, and welcome to Decisions Professional Services. We've created this video to help pave the way for a successful software development project. Here is our roadmap to success. We're going to walk step by step and talk about what will hinder and help your project and what you can do to ensure a great outcome. Oftentimes, to understand software development, people use the metaphor of a construction site. They may think, just hand a bunch of contractors a blueprint for a building and they can go execute that blueprint. However, that doesn't work for software development. Software developers have to actually understand what's going on, what problem it is they're trying to solve, in order to deliver anything of quality. You can't just hand a bunch of developers a list of requirements, lock them in a room with a week's worth of ramen, and say, go build. That won't work. The metaphor we like to use at Decisions is that of a road trip. For any road trip, you need a clear destination in mind, and it's important that everyone gets there together. Our road trip starts with vision. Vision simply means you know where you're going. You know what software you want to create. But there are two parts of vision. First, you need to know the big picture, what's our destination, but you also need vision for what's right in front of you, what you need to do right now to navigate traffic. Without the big picture, you'll get lost. Without the immediate picture, you'll get in a wreck. It's exactly the same with software development. You need to know the big picture and be able to clearly articulate what problem you're trying to solve, but you also need to keep your eye on the road. Keep your eye on what's directly in front of you. That's why we encourage daily stand-up meetings with your Decisions team. These daily touch points let us quickly course correct and adapt as conditions change. And conditions can change quickly. The political environment in your company, expectations set by leaders, your budget, due dates for important customer engagements, these may all be sunny one minute and stormy the next. It's critical that you have the vision to recognize these conditions and communicate them to your Decisions team. That brings us to our next step, communication. Everyone on this road trip has to clearly communicate in order for us all to get where you want to go. Here are two kinds of communication we will need from you.
First, initial communication. Begin by creating basic process diagrams and data models. Process diagrams will help us understand how you already work, and data models will help us understand what information is important to you.
Second, ongoing communication. Talk with your developers. Tell them what's happening. Don't be afraid of change. The daily stand-ups are the best time for this. The next step on the road to success is defining the team. Who is in the car? At Decisions, we talk about the team in terms of three distinct roles that we borrow straight from the Scrum methodology. There's the product owner, the project manager, and the developers. All of them need to be working together in order to produce quality software. Okay, let's look at each. The product owner is the person most singularly responsible for the success of the project. This has to be somebody from your company's side. Decisions cannot supply this. This is the person who knows exactly what problem they're trying to solve for your company and has the acumen to understand the political environment there. They must have the authority to answer questions and approve any given feature that we've developed. Now, we can't stress this enough. The role of the product owner cannot be delegated. We might work with somebody for 6 months who's telling us we're doing a great job and everything is going fine. And then at the end of the 6 months, their boss comes along, looks at the software and says, this isn't what I wanted, and storms away. The problem here is that we weren't actually working with the product owner. We were working with someone who had been delegated that role. The actual product owner must be available regularly, at least on a weekly basis, to say yes or no to the software. Additionally, the product owner owns the vision. They're the driver of the car in our metaphor. They decide when to turn left or right in the short term, but they also need to have an overall understanding of the map. They understand the needs of other stakeholders in your company and choose what to work on first. Imagine a software project that affects HR, finance, and sales. Each different department will be itching to see their particular feature being developed. The product owner is the one who recognizes these different priorities and decides this is what we're working on now. That can't be left up to Decisions or any of the developers. Next, we have the project manager. In our metaphor, the project manager is the navigator. They keep the project organized. They ask tough questions. For example, we had a customer who said, we want to be able to create assignments that have both priority and a due date. And the project manager was the one who asked, well, what would happen if we had a due date of next week but was high priority, and at the same time a due date of today but it was low priority? Which one would you want to work on first? These are the kind of tough questions that the project manager should be asking. It's their job to recognize blind spots and bring them to the attention of the rest of the team. Lastly, there are the developers. Now this is us. We're going to come in, listen to you, understand your problem space, and develop the software you want. And it's really important that we develop things in a way that are easily changeable and testable, because chances are if we develop something that looks great on Monday, by Friday you may have changed your mind. And that's okay, as long as we develop with change in mind and you keep us in the loop. Okay, so that's vision, communication, and the team. Next is questions. Here are some very common questions you can expect to get from us. First, external integrations. Do we need to integrate with services like Salesforce or DocuSign? Second, deadlines. When does this need to be delivered? Now keep in mind, and I hate to be so blunt about this, but your deadlines have to be yours. They aren't necessarily ours. I can't tell you how many times we've had customers show up and say, I want to build this very large thing, and oh, the deadline is the end of the month. Well, if we weren't consulted about that first, our answer might have to be, I'm really sorry, but we won't be able to have it done by then. Your deadlines have to be owned by you. Our developers can definitely advise about realistic deadlines, but your project won't be successful if you come in with set deadlines and say, now go meet them. The third question is about users. Who will be using the software? Do we need restrictions on who can see what? Thinking about this beforehand and having an initial list for us will prompt great conversation early on in the project. Fourth, data. What kind of data are you working with? Does it need to be HIPAA or FINRA compliant? Is there PII that needs to be encrypted? Fifth, UI. Will your application have a UI? And if so, will it be built in Decisions? One popular configuration is what we like to call headless. That is, Decisions is only the backend engine to process data and store things. But you may want front end as well, with forms and dashboards. It's entirely up to you. Just give us a heads up early on. Sixth, process diagrams. How are you currently accomplishing the task we will be working on? Now, we don't want you spending a huge amount of time defining in detail all of your processes that you might want to end up changing anyway, but having some simple high-level diagrams about key processes will be incredibly helpful for prompting early discussion. And lastly, other teams. Are there other teams in your company that we need to integrate with? For large companies especially, there are often access or identity management teams. Just let us know who they are so we can get to know them early on. Okay, the next step on our roadmap is choices. At this point in the project, you've defined your vision, communicated it, the team has been set, questions have been answered, and now development work has begun in earnest. Now you have choices to make. Often, during development, these choices come down to quality versus speed. Quality software simply takes longer to build because we're building in documentation and unit testing at the same time. We can build faster, but at the cost of some of that quality. And that can be okay. Sometimes you're facing a short deadline like a trade show at the end of the month, and the software just has to be working before then. We're happy to do that, but keep in mind that acceleration necessarily incurs technical debt. Technical debt is something that you have to deal with in the future. Again, that can be okay, but you should pay attention to how much you accumulate over time. Tech debt also accrues interest. If you meet with one of our developers and they say, I need to spend a day writing some tests and documentation about this procedure I've created, and you say, well, we don't have time for that right now. That's okay. We can put it off and come back to it later. But just keep in mind that when we do go back, it might cost more than a day to complete. It could cost 2 or 3 days now because the functionality has grown and become integrated with the overall process. The point is, if you choose to incur tech debt, do so thoughtfully and with a plan to pay it back as soon as possible. Okay, so this is what it takes. We start our journey with a strong vision of where you want to go, you communicate your vision, and together we define the project team. Then it's question time to hammer out details. If you prep answers to the questions we listed earlier, this step will be a breeze. As the work progresses, you'll have choices to make. Sometimes you'll agree to take on some technical debt in exchange for speed. Now, the alternative path to all this is one of unclear vision, ill-defined roles, poor communication, debilitating technical debt, and ultimately it ends with your project being stalled out on the side of the road with steam coming from under the hood. But if you stick to the plan, we will reach success, and it will feel great to get there. At the end of the project, success will mean that the software does what you want it to do, and it's easy to use. But there's another layer here. For the product owner, the project manager, and the developers, success also means that the software is easy to change and easy to test. Imagine a year from now when your boss comes to you and says, wow, what you've made is really great. In fact, it's so good we want to expand on it. That would be fantastic news if we have easy changeability, testability, and good documentation already in place. Otherwise, it might be time for a small panic. So just listen to your developers when they tell you you might be sacrificing some of that and it might come back to bite you later. Okay, that's all we've got for now. We're really excited to work together, and thanks for choosing Decisions.